everyone, it's Taylor here, and today I want to show you how I created this floral element using our Flip the Floral stamp set. So the stamp set comes with one long lineup of flowers and several sentiments that can be stamped in the opening. I'm going to take that stamp off of the storage sheet, and I'll be using a piece of sugar cube cardstock. You can see here I'm lining it up right along the 1/2 inch mark. It also helps me to use a pencil to mark the edges of my cardstock so that when I flip that around, I make sure I get it in the exact same spot. So now I'm taking and putting that floral stamp up towards the top of the cardstock and picking it up with my MISTI lid. I want to make sure that it is straight across the grid line on the lid of my MISTI so that when I stamp it onto my cardstock, it will be straight. So we're just going to ink that with Oreo ink and put that down, and then I'm going to pick up my piece of paper and flip it around, making sure to line it up between those 2 pencil marks that I made. And then I'm going to ink again and stamp that. And you can see once I've done that, I get that piece in the middle that is just enough space for a sentiment. I will be using the Congratulations to the Happy Couple sentiment, so we'll grab that off of the storage panel and again hold our MISTI or our cardstock down with a MISTI magnet, pick up that sentiment and make sure that it's straight, and then stamp it down with Oreo ink. So now we have finished the stamping portion. It was super easy to achieve that look, and now we will die cut with the coordinating die, just lining that up around the edge of the stamped image. I am doing the top piece first, and then we'll take that out of the die cut machine and do the bottom half of that arrangement in the same way. Just flipping that die around, lining it up. I'm adhering it with a little bit of Scotch removable tape as I send that through the die cut machine. So you can see how that turned out, and next we will do our coloring. I stamped with our Oreo ink, which is hybrid and Copic compatible. I will be coloring with Copic markers. I'm starting with YG 93 and 95, adding the lighter color to the leaves first, and then shading at the base of each leaf with the darker YG 95. Next I have RV 63 and RV 66. I'm starting with the lighter 63 and then coming back to shade with the darker 66. The first rows will be YR 21 and 23. So I'm taking and shading that entire rows first with the lighter color, and then using those black marks. They are great for using as a shading guide. So I'm adding a little bit of the darker color and then going back to blend with my lighter color. And I will do the same for those 2 kind of pink coral roses as well. I'm using R21, R22, and R24 as the 3 color blend on those roses. You can see again, I'm using those dark black tick marks, I guess, on the roses to determine where I want to add my shading. And then it's important to always step back to your lighter color to do that blending, to do your shading and blending out. After finishing the coloring, you can see how pretty that turned out, and we're going to work on the background next. So you might remember our Buffalo Plaid background stamp. We released that at Christmas last year, and now we have a grid background stamp that fits perfectly within the squares of the Buffalo Plaid. So I'll be using these 2 to create the background on this card. The first step is going to be to set up the Buffalo Plaid in the MISTI. I am aligning that towards the bottom of my MISTI, picking it up with the lid, and we are going to be stamping onto toffee cardstock. I like to put a little bit of Scotch adhesive dot roller down on my grid paper just to hold my cardstock in place. You are not able to use a magnet when you stamp with a background stamp, so that little bit of adhesive just helps make sure it stays in place in case you do want to stamp it more than once. I'm inking the stamp with toffee ink and then stamping that down. You can see how that turned out just beautifully. And now comes the part of lining up the grid. This time I'm shifting the stamp a little bit higher, and I need to insert a piece of window transparency into my MISTI. I've put that all the way up to the top, and I'm going to hold it in place with some of the thick purple tape, just making sure that it creates a nice hinge so that that window transparency comes down over the top of my paper. Now I'm stamping onto the window transparency with Oreo ink, and I chose Oreo because it's a nice dark color that I can see well. I need to clean that off of my stamp because on my cardstock I would like to stamp with sugar cube ink. So I've cleaned that black ink off, and now I'm coming back with the sugar cube ink. I'm inserting my cardstock underneath that transparency sheet and lining it up so you can see that those lines are exactly where I want them before I place that stamp down over the top. And as we peel that away, you can see just how beautifully that worked. And you can try many different things. You can line those lines up within the solid squares or within the open squares. There are lots of different options for that combo of backgrounds. I'm finishing the card off now with just a little bit of 1/16 inch foam tape to pop that up onto the card base, and then it will be all finished. This would make a perfect anniversary or wedding card, and I hope you've learned something new today. You can find all of these products at the Taylored Expressions web store at tayloredexpressions.com. And if you enjoyed today's video, subscribe to our YouTube channel.